And I'm not leaving here until I do see Lucy.
Oh, honey, you're wrong. You're leaving here for nightfall.
Mrs. Ewing, I wish I could give you some hope that you could have children safely.
Secrets is Dallas at its most contrived, and a satisfying emotional payoff isn't quite enough to justify these contrivances. Bobby and Pam are still at each other's throats over Pam's decision not to have a baby, because of the neurofibromatosis.
Neurofibromatosis.
Pam refuses to let Bobby know why, frustrating him and providing the first secret of the title. Bobby vents to Miss Ellie about not understanding women. She tells him to apologize to Pam or work it out. He also jinxes Ellie and Jock by saying they never fight. Yeah, give that one a year.
We stopped to copper.
I am to copper.
Valene Ewing is also back to see Lucy, giving us another secret for the title. Lucy brushes her off, buying into the lie that Valene held JR up for money and then left town. This is needlessly confrontational because Lucy, of all people, should know better. Valene says she left because she knew Miss Ellie would always take care of Lucy. And Lucy says she's tired of being jerked around by Valene, which is a fair argument regardless of Valene's guilt or innocence. Pam's physical checks out. She has no symptoms of neurofibromatosis.
Neurofibromatosis.
But because neurofibromatosis is a genetic disease, her giving birth is like Russian roulette for the child.
Neurofibromatosis.
The Ewing oil men are still struggling to get out from under the thumb of Cliff Barnes, and their lawyers aren't much help. The environmental groups and the judiciary are behind Cliff. JR's favorite lawyer, Alan Beam,
Alan Beam,
questions whether Cliff would give up his OLM position if he thought that there was a juicier role for him in politics. I should note that JR and Alan are bound by oral fixation in this scene.
All that talk don't help a bit.
Sue Ellen is still a sheet of ice when it comes to baby John, but in a great bit of silent acting from Linda Gray, we can tell her feelings are different from the previous episodes. Like there are cracks in that ice of a woman who wants to be a mother but is deathly afraid to.
It's the one and only D.R.E.
Luella is planning her honeymoon now, and Bobby stops to bond with her. Oh, that's sweet. Val calls to set up a clandestine meeting with Bobby, the one Ewing who always has a sympathetic ear. Val asks for his help in talking to Lucy because she and Gary have been talking about getting back together. Bobby tells her not to get Lucy's hopes up, but he does agree to help arrange a meet. Pam arrives back at South Fork after skipping work. Her excuse?
I didn't feel like working, so I just drove around all day.
Ellie tells her to call Mr. Hollister, who's been looking for her. Of course, it's actually Pam's doctor who gives her some potentially disturbing news about the neurofibromatosis.
You're pregnant, Mrs. Ewing.
Neurofibromatosis.
Bobby comes home and apologizes for their earlier argument. Pam tells him that she wants to have his baby more than anything, but then the conversation just peters out before she can tell him why. JR is giddy that Patricia and Kristen are coming for dinner, and Sue Ellen tells him she doesn't care what he does anymore. But she does enjoy seeing the family gush over baby John, while being ignorant of the role that Cliff Barnes played in the whole story. JR tells her to start drinking again so she'll shut up. Savage. At the office, JR gets even more good news. If Cliff Barnes wants to be a congressman, he'd have to resign from the OLM first before he could announce. Alan offers to be the middleman to gin up some buzz and spread some Ewing dark money around. Alan asks what happens if Cliff wins, and JR tells him that the campaign money will dry up as soon as Cliff is out of office. Sort of political Mott and Bailey routine. Pamela still can't get a straight answer about the health of her baby, but she says she won't burden Bobby with the information.
If I decide to do something about this, I want it over and done with before he knows.
Instead, she vents to Cliff, who will understand. Yeah, Cliff doesn't understand, and he scolds her for bringing up the A word.
An abortion?
Cliff needs a high inside fastball to get him to back off, but it is understandable he'd bring his own baggage into the conversation when it comes to a Bobo's. Cliff does rightly point out that Pamela doesn't know if she'd be aborting a perfectly healthy baby or not. Pamela finally says it out loud. She can't tell Bobby because Bobby would know that little John might be living on borrowed time, and that would crush him.
I can't tell. It's just like little John. Maybe he'll be all right.
This is some valid thinking from Pam, as Bobby has shown himself to be a bit of a hothead when it comes to emotional issues. But that still doesn't take her off the hook for not having an adult conversation with her adult husband. Bobby takes Valene to see Lucy at cheerleading practice, but Lucy tells him to take a hike. Unfortunately, JR is scoping out the hot young talent on the squad and spies Valene with Bobby. Yeah, a man in his 40s hanging out at a college cheerleading practice with a pair of binoculars. Yes, that's gross, but it's also kinda pathetic.
That's what I love about these high school girls, man. I get older, they stay the same age.
Jesus, John Ross. By the way, if they ever decide to do a Dallas movie adaptation, Matthew McConaughey wouldn't be the worst JR. Miss Ellie drops the most wholesome and practical wisdom on a struggling Pamela. The boys weren't the goal of her marriage to Jock. They were the byproduct of the love between them. With or without the children, Ellie and Jock would have had a good life. If you do decide to have kids and one of them accidentally sets fire to South Fork, go easy on him. JR manipulates Jock into sending Bobby to Austin to apply political pressure to Cliff Barnes. But first, Bobby tells Lucy to get over herself and talk to Valene. He delivers a pretty good speech about how Valene keeps coming back, even at the price of her dignity, just because she loves Lucy. JR, of course, has already tracked Valene down and shows up at her hotel to threaten her away again. This time she stands up to him and tells him that she's not going anywhere. Lucy and Bobby arrive just in time to overhear Valene's defiant stand, and that's enough for Lucy to forgive her. And for Bobby to drag JR out by the metaphorical scruff of the neck. In a strange goof, Lucy apologizes for the things she said to Valene that morning, but it was the previous day that they talked. Maybe those pills did more damage than we thought. Lucy and Valene agree to rebuild their relationship by starting out as friends. And we're out. Secrets depends a lot on characters refusing to talk to one another, and other characters being in the right place at the right time. Writer-director Leonard Katzman does his best to provide some valid reasoning, but it's still just too frustrating to watch. I'm always glad to see Valene back in the picture, and this was a nice triumphant moment to redeem the character in anticipation of the Knots Landing spin-off. JR's paranoia about Gary and Valene moving back to South Fork and stealing it away from him rings hollow, though, as neither Gary nor Valene have shown any interest in South Fork other than it being where Lucy lives. Gary even felt out of place on the ranch before he was tempted to drink. JR just feels like an obstacle for an obstacle's sake here.
And I've written to my mom about the wedding. I want her and my daddy to be here for it.
The plot twist of Pamela being pregnant for a second time also suffers from weird timing. She just found out in the previous episode that any baby she produced could be dead within a year, and then in this episode she coincidentally finds out that she's pregnant? It doesn't help that Bobby keeps scolding her for looking after little John, and then telling her that he doesn't want the baby coming in between them if it's so important to her. In Pulp Fiction, Butch didn't tell his girlfriend, "Hey, you forgot my father's watch, but it's okay because I don't want it to come between us. Let's just catch a flight out of here." All of this just makes Pamela's decision seem so unreasonable when really, we should be feeling her inner turmoil over the decision to either have a baby or seek an abortion. It takes the writers a few episodes to iron out the drama, and then they just equus ex machina their way out of it anyway. The real impact of this episode is the plot to overthrow Cliff Barnes begins here. And that's going to be a doozy this season.